WNST, Towson Butler to speak to this man. I knew him first as a Montreal Expo and a 1973 baseball card when I was a child in Dundalk. And, of course, he came to the Orioles, and we all imitated him from the right side, the left side. I pulled imaginary stones out of my batter's box in 1976. Ken Singleton joins us here from the Yes Network via Cockeysville, via the Orioles. And Singy, I got to tell you, man, I follow you out on Twitter and out on Facebook, and I see this little thing pop up, and it says, Singleton announces retirement, and you're hanging up the microphone, and I said, you know what? I owe Singleton a text. What's going on? You're in the prime of your career. You got 20 years of Orioles broadcasting ahead of you here. I've seen it.
No, this is going to be it, Nestor. I'm not broadcasting for any more teams. I've been doing this for 34 years, believe it or not, broadcasting, and you throw 15 years of playing before that, so it's been a long time in the major leagues. I've enjoyed every single minute of it, but I always told myself I'm not going to stay up there forever. It's sort of like when I retired as a player. There were people who felt I could still play, but I kind of knew that it was time to go. And although this is a little different because I could still do this, I just didn't want to. I felt like it was time. I had a 2-year deal. This is the second year of it. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll go for one more. But then I began to think, you asked for a 2-year deal for a reason, and this is the second year, so this is going to be it. My daughter's graduating from Penn State this spring, so now it's time for me to graduate as well. There's a lot of things I want to do that I haven't been able to do because summertimes are locked into baseball. Look, I'll still always love this game. You know me. It's in my blood. But if there's a blues festival somewhere, I'll be able to go to it. There's a great one in Chicago. I can just hop on a plane and go. If I want to play Pebble Beach, want to play golf, I'll hop on a plane and go there. These are all the things I can't do in the summer. And plus, I can hang out with my buddies a little bit more, and we can play golf and tell stories. And it's funny, I got a text from Don Stanhouse today, and all it said was, really? More golf.
I hit him last week, too, after the passing of Sammy Stewart, and, I certainly could talk to you about that later on in the conversation, but I got so many things on my mind here. First thing is I said to my wife, I'm like, Singy's got to be pushing like 60 now, right? And then I started to do the math on it, and I'm like, all right, I'm pushing 50. I turned 50 this year, Singy, so, I'm catching you, believe it or not. I mean, I remember when I was the kid and you were the adult, and here we are, so, all these years later. Yeah, but I said to my wife,
60.
Well, I know. I wikied it. I know series, where you are, but your whole start on this thing, can you recount the story back in the 80s when you were an Oriole and wanted to do this for a living? Because, it has been, 34 years of broadcasting here, and did it start as an internship at Channel 13? I remember you being on the weekends, and it was such a unique thing for a local athlete to be doing that in that day and age, to see an athlete doing broadcasting on the weekends locally.
Yeah, during the course of my career, I was getting down towards the end. I knew I had to do something. So I was talking over with, because I had 2 young boys at the time, and I was talking with my representative or agent, or now, my good friend Ron Shapiro. And he suggested that, I go in and intern at, TV stations in town. Well, I went over to Channel 11 first with Vince Bagley. And not only did I intern, but during the playoffs, when we didn't make the playoffs, he and Chris Thomas, the late Chris Thomas, would have me on. And I'd kind of give my take on what was going to happen in the playoffs. Now, it didn't always work. I kind of felt bad about it because I didn't want people betting the house on what I had to say. So, but I did it, and that gave me a little insight as to what the TV business was like. In 1981, of course, I was still playing, but there was a big strike that year, 52 days in the middle of the season. And they called me at Channel 11 again and said, would you like to come in? We need something on our sportscast. And you can cover Little League or softball, and I did that as well. They sent me out with a producer. I had no idea what I was doing, Nestor. I hope those tapes are long gone. But from there, After I was finished playing, I went to Channel 13, like you said. Got to work with Al Sanders and Jerry Turner, which was just a beautiful experience. They accepted me right away. I did the weekend sports, but meanwhile, I was also doing Montreal Expos television, and I would do the weekend sports, do the games during the week, and I could be as far away as Houston and make it back and do the sports on Sunday night. So that got old after a while, though. That's a long way from Houston back to Baltimore.
You know, it really speaks volumes to you. The Yankees could have had anybody to be their broadcast. You know what I mean? Like that's where you wound up. Really is, I mean, the whole thing's a credit to them that have sort of a kind of an outsider, because they had so many legends that they could have had. But also, 20 years later, and you're still walking away on your own term. You've really had an incredible broadcasting career above and beyond. Some people don't even know you played.
Well, maybe that's true, but as you said, 22 years with the Yankees, and when I first got hired, of course, the final say was Mr. Steinbrenner's. And I remember going into his office, and I sat down next to him at a big, long conference table. I was with the executive producer of MSG at the time, Mike McCarthy, and the president of the network, it was Joe Cohen. And Steinbrenner looked me right in the eye and said, "Our fans aren't going to like you." And I said, "With all due respect, Mr. Steinbrenner, how come?" And he said, "Because I can't recall all the bad things he used to do to us. You and that guy, Eddie Murray." So I said, "Well, I was just doing my job." And he said, "Well, you did it very well." But I think one reason why he said it was okay to the deal was that he knew I was from New York, and he wanted to give a kid from New York a break. And 22 years later, it's time to say goodbye. And I've enjoyed every single minute with the Yankees. Of course, MSG gave way to Yes when George started the Yes Network.
It's interesting that I didn't even equate you with Steinbrenner in some weird way. You know what I mean? Like, because he's been gone so long. But, I mean, come on, man. We're talking about an era in the late 90s where he controlled every peanut, every paperclip. You know what I mean? Literally. I mean, you were on the broadcast. You were approved by the boss. There must have I mean, you went into an area in a time where it was a little bit circusy, right? Like, they had just won. They were on top of the world for the first time in a long time. And to look back now over 2 decades and say that has been the hallmark of stability, right? After all of the nonsense that went on when you were a player, where you go in on a trip in April and Lemon to be the manager, you go in June and Martin to be the manager. By the time you got there in October, Hal could be the manager, right? Literally, right?
Yeah. Well, now there's since I've been here, there's only been 3: Joe Torre, Joe Girardi, and now Aaron Boone. I think one reason that you mentioned stability, and I've been here 22 years, and they've had a winning record every single year. They've won 5 World Series, but they've had a winning record every year. And it's been, like I said, I've enjoyed every minute of it. I think the best year was '98 when they won 125 games. I think I did that year 100 games on television, and they won 72 of them. I felt like the weatherman in San Diego. I had good news every day, and that was a fun year. Great guys to cover, and some of them now are in the broadcast. David Cohn, Paul O'Neill, Al Leiter's up there now, so I get to work with these guys who are on that team, and like I said, they're great guys in the booth as well.
The most uncanny story that I've never told you through all the years I've known you is that as a small boy in 1979, by the way, Ken Singleton is our guest. He's like furniture around here. You see him at Cockeysville, honk the horn. He's going into retirement, so get him a rocking chair and whatever. This is the last year for Singy. But in 79, my dad and I went to a lot of baseball games. And, of course, that was your team and your all-star year and all that stuff. And we sat in left field. So, we were out with Renicky and Lowenstein and those guys. I was never on your side of the on Hagee's side over there. But come on, Ken, hit in the bullpen, all that stuff that was birthed at, all that. But, I went to 31 on the life of my child, wife, cat, and everything holy, 31 straight games before you lost. I saw you win 31. I'm not kidding. There were 2 or 3 games where my dad went out with some of the neighbors' kids, and I refused to go, and they lost. My dad went with one of his work buddies one night without me, and you lost. And I ran into Steve Trout last year in Arizona at a Cubs spring training game. He's signing autographs out in center field, and he was the architect who beat us that night in late August to beat the Orioles, to cost me my first loss. I went 38-4 that year on the whole year, and the most important thing, Singy, I was there at Game 5 in Philly that, so that was 83, but in 79, I was not at Game 7. But 31-0, it's true story.
You should have come to every game. You should have come home and rode.
Should have been the mascot. Yeah, I mean, I certainly heckled Bombo Rivera in left field, and Willie Wilson and some of the rest of those guys, but such is my childhood, and now you're retiring at the age of 60, or what you used to be. But so what goes into this decision?
I used to be 60.
Dude, were you on a golf course and just said, this is it? Were you in a hotel room? Were you at a baseball game? Is this something you come to with your family and prayer over the off season?
No, this was kind of, it took a little while for me to come to this decision. But I've always told myself, Nestor, I wasn't going to be up in the booth forever. And I was going to have a lot left when I left. A lot left in the tank when I left. Fortunately, working for the U.S. Network and working for the Yankees, they pay pretty well. So it's not like I'm going to want for anything. Like I said, my daughter's graduating from college, and by the way, she's got a degree in planetary science and astronomy. She's way too smart for me. And so
I want to have her as a guest on the show and explain all that Carl Sagan stuff to me, okay?
Yeah, I told her if she ever discovers a new planet, name it after me. It's just time. I've got grandkids now. I love hanging out with them. I love reading to my granddaughters. I love playing basketball and baseball with my grandson. I'm going to teach him all the subtleties of playing this game. He's a very good player. He's only 8 years old, but he's got it. I can see it. And he's got the desire. I love it when the grandkids are crawling all over you and just having fun. But if something goes wrong, I can always give them back to my son or daughter-in-law and just say, here, you guys fix this.
Well, amidst all this, you might win this year, right? I mean, this is not a bad year to sort of go all in and say, well, maybe there'll be some games to call in late October or early November, depending on scheduling, right?
Yeah, that's true. They do have a chance. They are a good team. They're having a good spring. They seem to be healthy at this point. And of course, the Yankees, they have the wherewithal to go out and do what they want during the course of the season. If they feel they have a chance, and I think they feel they have a chance already, they'll make the moves that are necessary to almost try and guarantee themselves the best possible shot at winning the World Series.
Well, we don't have that affliction here in Baltimore right now, and, I'd love for you to speak to that because, you were a guy right around the time when the collusion thing happened. You were getting out of the sport. I know I had many long conversations with Mike Flanagan about that period of time where players were being, you come from the player side. You got all the scars. You remember that it was 52 days in 1981 when my dad didn't take it out on you guys. He took it out on the Sporting News. He canceled the Sporting News because he was mad at baseball, and there were no box scores in there. So, I have intimate, remembrances of that, and seeing players not get signed, I think it has to be a little disturbing to any player or former player, right?
Yeah, well, we fought long and hard for these rights that we have now. I was there the first year of free agency, and I remember we had Reggie, and he left, and he went to the Yankees, and I began to think about it over the years, because shortly thereafter, the Orioles signed me to a 5-year deal. And so if they had signed Reggie, they might not have the money to sign me. So I don't know if that would have been the case, but there was a definite possibility that would have happened because, I got the longest term deal and the most money at the time that any Oriole had ever gotten. And it showed me that they were committed to me. And twice thereafter, I could have become a free agent, and I decided to stay. First of all, I was already on a good team with the Orioles. During my 10 years there, we won more games than any other team. We won over 900 games. And and we got to the World Series twice. I played with great guys, not only good ball players and great ball players, they were just great people. And I'm still close to quite a few of them. and I've heard from quite a few of them since I decided to hang up my microphone, as you say, and they want me more on the golf course now. Not that they're going to beat me, but just that they want me out there playing with them. And believe me, we have more fun now than we did when we were playing.
Well, you know, in that era and what happened for you to fight for all that, to see some of these guys come back with their tails between their legs and where the market is gone, but certainly not going to affect the Machado market, right, or the Bryce Harper market, which this is their year to go set all that. And certainly the Orioles have set sail on this campaign this year where Jones, Buck, Duquette, Machado, Brock, and Britton are all in walk years. So there's certainly a lot of, a lot at stake individually for Orioles players here. But then it comes back to pitching and who's going to pitch. Personally, Ken, and I know you have a little familiarity with this guy, any guy named Nestor is a guy that I want in the Orioles rotation. So I'm a big Nestor Cortez guy. You know, I mean, bring me the Rule 5 guy. I just want to see him pitch every fifth day because the Orioles have never had a Nestor, you know?
Well, they got him from the Yankee organization as a Rule 5. So, that means the Yankees have a lot of prospects. Their farm system is stacked. They couldn't protect everybody, so the Orioles picked him off. I've yet to see him pitch, so maybe he will be in the rotation. You know, who knows? You know, there's a lot of time between now and the end of spring training, so we'll see what happens.
Well, you guys named Ken. I got a lot of guys named Ken. I got one Nestor in the whole baseball universe to root for, so I'm pulling for this guy. Some thoughts on the Yankees and the move, Singy, just in where they stand and what they're trying to do. And obviously, a year and a half ago, you and I did some radio together before the big trade-off and the sell-off and, dipping their toe in the water with the fan base to make sure nobody thought they were running a white flag up. And then last year, you and I had a couple of conversations, and it was a great season in New York, and you wind up with a new manager, you wind up with new star players, and Stan, I mean, there has been no lack of chutzpah by Cashman and the Steinbrenner lads there to make the team great again. I mean, the notion that they're going to win 100 games this year feels like everybody feels that they're going to win 100 games this year.